meeting will serve as the minutes. Any objections there? And when each of you speak, I would ask that you would identify yourself for the record when making a motion or a second, so that we'll have that on record. With that, I'll turn it over to Allie to read the statement of necessity.
Thank you. Allie Gaffey, Director of Engagement and Accountability for the State Board. So the Tennessee School Board Advisory Training Committee submits this determination of necessity for its meeting held today via WebEx at 2:30 p.m. March 11, 2022. This meeting was called to review and recommend for approval the school board training course applications, which were received by the State Board by February 15th. Due to the time-sensitive nature of the items on the committee's agenda and the fact that the committee members reside across the state, it was determined that a physical quorum of the members could not be assembled in Nashville for purposes of this meeting, and as such, this meeting would be conducted electronically. The following members announced participation in the meeting via teleconference: Carly Bufalino, Bob Eby, Brett Henley, who has not yet joined, Amy Owen serving as Sarah Morrison's designee, and David Stevens. Notice of the meeting was posted on the State Board's website along with the agenda and instructions for accessing the WebEx.
Okay. Then let's go ahead and start with the application process. Allie, you want to, hopefully everyone received the various applicants and has had an opportunity to review those, and we'll talk about them and then set a path forward based on that. That's my objective for today.
Thanks, Bob. Yes, so in terms of the application process, I wanted to re-ground us in our charge here. So I've included a reminder of the State Board's responsibility in law, which comes from TCA 49-2-202, and our charge in State Board rule, which is to evaluate and recommend training courses for approval to the State Board. So this slide serves as a reminder of our process. We did receive 23 applications by the February 15th deadline and are now in the process of reviewing the applications. So this committee has the authority to review all of the applications we received, to send back any feedback for revisions, and to make recommendation to the State Board by May 1st. So as we discuss the applications that were reviewed against our rubric today, we'll want to consider what information, if any, we need to determine if the course meets the standards set forth in the State Board rule. The rubric we approved at our last meeting outlines each of those requirements that are in rule, and all applications have been individually scored against those requirements and shared with you in advance of this meeting. In terms of our applications that we received, as I mentioned, there were 23 in total, and this slide breaks down the number of applications that we received from each prospective course provider. And so what I'd like to do is just go, this is in alphabetical order, no particular order beyond that, and we'll talk through each of those to see if there's any additional feedback that we'd like to provide, and if we agree with the recommendation that was on each of the rubrics. So starting with Dorian Campbell Consulting. This applicant submitted 4 different courses for review. And so the first one that you have is called Reshaping Our Thinking for Academic Growth. And the recommendation currently was that it does not meet the standard. It does have some strengths, but several weaknesses, and happy to talk through each of them if we'd like, or just open it up to you all to share any additional feedback that you may have for this course.
I had some comments, but I would first entertain any thoughts that Charlie or Amy or David may have before I speak. Any thoughts?
None from me. I mean, it seemed like it was deficient based on, I would agree, kind of what the staff prepared on that one.
It seemed to me to be focused, if I'm looking at the correct course, on charter school academic growth, which is perfectly fine, but we have a separate process for looking at charter school training courses for those governing boards. So I'm just curious if it either needs to shift in content to be more about local boards generally, or if maybe it should be looking at the charter process.
One comment I had, first I thought the topics were relevant, but my concern is within a 1-hour course, how deeply can you really get into a course in an hour on how broad these topics are? And particularly this one called Reshaping Academic Thinking seems pretty esoteric, and how can we reshape academic thinking in 1 hour? That was something that, so I would really want to understand better maybe course content, what they're having before. I have a real issue on some of those. And then I think the other thing is we got to recognize that the state board requirement is that the state, as the local board members, needs 7 hours of courses. So thinking from just a logistics standpoint, if they took 4 1-hour courses here, then they're going to have to go find, some other courses, and do the other courses match up with 1-hour courses to make the 7? I don't know the answer to that question, but I just had some difficulties with this whole application. Another question was, where have they done it before? I could not, there was no citations of where they had actually taught local boards of education and even taught anything like this before. So those are questions I had.
Okay, I've made note of those comments. And as we roll through the remaining 3 courses that Dorian Campbell Consulting proposed, we can certainly apply similar comments across the board to add. Just let me know if there's anything in addition. So the next one is the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, or DEI course. Anything to add beyond what is provided in the rubric for feedback?
I couldn't see a lot of difference between this course and the course about inclusion. Just as I was reading the summary, I wasn't sure what I would get in going to one rather than the other.
So I'm sorry. So we're going to go through each one of the individual courses as opposed to each group. Yeah. So yeah, my comments are the same here too.
No problem. I'll apply those across the board for this one.
And
okay.
I agree with what Amy just said. So.
Okay. The next one, creating an inclusive governing board. This one also does not meet the standard. A lot of similar reasons. Anything to add for this course? Okay. And the 4th course for Dorian Campbell Consulting is called Communicating with Clarity. Also does not meet the standard. Again, similar questions, and I'll apply the same comments as previous, but anything to add?
I think one thing is important for us to note, and it's not just for this one, but for all of them, is our intent is that we're going to provide feedback, and then the applicants will have a period of time in which they can correct their deficiencies or answer our questions, and then we will meet back again in April or so. Is that, since we have to make a recommendation to the board at the May meeting, is that the thought process or what?
Exactly, yep. So the recommendation is due by May 1st. And so we will provide the applicant this feedback through the rubric, give them an opportunity to resubmit if they so choose. And then we will come back together in April. So I'll send a scheduling invite to determine what everyone's availability is to make final recommendations for the state board by May 1st. And
do the applicants recognize that approach, that we will be providing them feedback and that they have until sometime in April to get information back?
So we haven't given them all of the specifics yet, but yes, they understand to some extent the part of the process at least.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, I'll move us ahead to the next one. This is from JSY Firm. And this course provider only had one course that they were proposing, and it is called Effective Board Communication, Exchanging Viewpoints and Resolving Conflicts. Recommendation here is partially meets the standard. So anything to add in terms of either strengths or weaknesses for this applicant?
So when you say they partially meet, I understand why Dorian didn't meet. They partially meet. Is their partial because they don't have an evaluation, or what is their partial meet?
Yep, so they had two areas of weakness in their application. So one is that they did provide a fee. They did mention that there is a fee for the course, but they did not explain what was included or what the reason for the fee was. And then also, yes, regarding the evaluation itself, it is unclear if their evaluation would evaluate the achievement of the objectives and the course effectiveness. So we'd want some more information on what they plan to include in that evaluation.
I would like to go on record saying that I think this course topic, having been a local board member for 16 years, is very relevant, exchanging viewpoints and resolving conflicts. And it appears that these people that taught the course are similar courses for TSBA. And, you know, I think I would strongly recommend that they fix what the deficiencies are. But again, this was a 3-hour course, so that would mesh up with the 4 1-hour courses, and you could do all that and you get your 7 hours that way. But I was favorably impressed with the application on this one.
You mentioned they used to do work with TSBA. Is TSBA offering, I know we haven't gotten there yet, and they have a lot of trainings. Are they doing something similar? Is there any sort of redundancy here between that one and this one?
They have a course on communications, but I'm not sure they have one specifically on resolving conflicts.
Got it.
So. I think it's board superintendent communication or something like that, relations, if I recall correctly. Good question.
And as we go through those, we can certainly keep that in mind too. Thanks, Charlie, for pointing that out.
And there's no problem if two suppliers are offering the same course. That provides a little competition.
Both high quality, right? It gives choices for board, right? Sure.
Exactly. Right.
Okay, any other thoughts on this course?
I'm with Bob. I thought it was a positive sign that they'd worked before with TSBA, as well as it looked like TASI and TSBA and several other Tennessee-focused groups. So I thought that was likely a sign in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree. That was definitely a strength. Understood the landscape.
Okay, great. Well, speaking of TSBA, they submitted 17 course applications, and we're going to go through them. So the first one that they submitted is called a deep dive into boardsmanship, and the recommendation here is partially meets the standard. This one, the reason it's partially meets the standard, and this is similar for the majority of their courses, is that their course evaluation, they included a copy of the evaluation itself. And while it has questions about the effectiveness of the course, the evaluation does not include an assessment of the participants' achievement of the stated learning objectives. So this would be something that they could really easily fix by adding potentially another question or a box for participants to fill in something they learned in their evaluation. Really quick fix for them. Anything
And
to
again,
add on
I
this
would
one?
recommend, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just asking for any feedback on this one. Go ahead, Bob.
I was just going to say, I would recommend that we be very clear to them on what we would, where we think the shortfall is, because I agree, I think they could fix that pretty quickly. I think they need to understand that, and that's something that we would like to see, is what has the participant learn, something specifically that they're going to take back to their local board would answer that question, correct?
Yeah, I think it could also just be interesting information and data for TSBA to have, depending on how they phrase the questions, right? Like, they've essentially got the satisfaction component already of did you find the training useful and effective? The other component is, how do we know that it was useful and effective for you? Did you learn it? I mean, I'm sure they don't want to necessarily do like a pop quiz, but if you were asked a couple questions about the content, could you respond? Or if you were asked how to make that connection to your practice, what ideas do you find? And that might even trigger new ideas for them too.
Good point.
Okay, let's talk about the next application they submitted is for advocating the board's vision. This is also partially meets the standard for the same reason. Anything to add on this course?
Bob, I think you should just tell us as we go how many times you've taken each of these individual courses.
Just for the other people, the way that the law reads is that if you had been off the board and came back on, you had to retake the board orientation, which was 14 hours, 2 days. And I was elected 4 times, off and on, during those 4 times. And so I ended up having to take the board orientation 3 times, I think. And there were 7 key modules that everybody has to take, and so I took those 3 times. I was glad when they came on with Eboardsmanship and some of the other ones. And as we go through this, you'll see the Law Institute, they're using that as a training, and I strongly support that because, to me, those are the most effective things in learning, what the law says and as a board member, how you're supposed to treat those laws. So, but I give TSBA a lot of credit. They do an excellent job in running these courses, and they make sure you stay there the full 7 hours. They don't let you leave early.
Okay, the third course is called Board Chairman Workshop, and this one is partially meets the standard again for the same feedback on the evaluation.
And that course is very effective if you've you're becoming a board chairman or you want to be a board chairman. It shows the responsibilities that you have, so that's a very helpful course.
Okay, the next one is titled Board Policy and Operations. Also, again, partially meets for the same reason.
TSBA actually provides the local boards sample policies from, obviously we as a state board, set out rules and policies, and then their policies have to meet those policies, and TSBA does a good job of reviewing the rules and policies that the state board and the department has and turning those into recommended policies for the local board, and they can buy those from TSBA. So it's a good course.
Okay, the next one is the board and superintendent relations. I think this is what you were thinking of earlier, Bob. Also partially meets the standard again for the evaluation piece.
I just have a question. I'm pretty sure it was changed somewhere. I don't know if it's in statute or where, but I believe we have directors of schools rather than superintendents. Is there any reason to change the name or to suggest it to TSBA?
That's a very good point, Amy. I mean, officially in law, it is a director of schools. So it's kind of like Kleenex it's kind of lost the factor in that. So what we might want to do is say superintendent, parentheses, director, or director, parentheses, superintendent. So.
I agree with that because that term is used with my colleagues. A lot of them introduce themselves as superintendents and a lot of others introduce themselves as director of school. So that would definitely put some clarity.
Certainly add that comment as well. Okay, the next course is the Eboardsmanship Course, and this one fully meets the standard here.
Yeah, that's a course that is taken online and I think does require an evaluation. So
Okay. After that, we have helping board members connect to today's labor market. And this course is provided actually by NS4Ed through TSBA. And the recommendation here is partially meets the standard. And the feedback on this one is, while the application included a program brochure which defines the course content and lists the types of materials included, it did not have a detailed description of the strategies and activities that they would actually be conducting in the course itself. So you're just requesting a little bit additional information here.
Yeah, that's one that is, I'm not familiar with that course, and I agree. I think having additional information would be helpful for that.
And I think that's one of the few I saw that was free. Doesn't have a fee.
That's true. Okay. After that is Innovative Schools Workshop. This is partially meets the standard, and this goes back to the evaluation feedback.
One thing I think is important is you'll see that TSBA has been developing new courses to be consistent with, you know, sort of the changes in expectations for districts and local boards. And so they're not, and you'll see this in some of the planning and developing a strategic plan, et cetera. It's not what you would think would be a normal course, but it is an effective use of the hours of the board member, and I think they do get outstanding experience in whether it's, you know, developing something for innovative schools or doing something with strategic planning, that type of thing. So I support those as legitimate courses to meet the hour requirement.
And the next course is actually their leadership conference. The recommendation here is does not meet the standard. There just is a lot of information that's missing, at least from the application itself. One of the pieces of feedback in the rubric is that the application stated that the course would be 7 hours in length, but the conference itself spans across 2 days, and the agendas that were included and the presentation materials that were included were from last year. So it's unclear if this was the same, if this would be the topics that would be covered, and if this actually covers the 7 hours. There were also a couple questions about the fee itself, $175 to cover the cost of materials, hotel, and meals, but unclear if that means it's covering the hotel room for attendees and what happens if someone is local. So a few clarifying questions there. And then also the evaluation feedback, same that we've discussed earlier, applies to this course as well.
Yeah,
You know,
All right, so this is, go ahead.
for it, David.
Yeah, I was going to say I know the fee does not cover the hotel for the attendees.
Right.
The way I read that was that it was the meeting help to pay for the meeting room at the hotel. Because I mean, I think a lot of the others had on their $125 fee. A lot of the others had the same thing where it said what materials, meals, and hotel. Like under the board superintendent relations, the course is $125 fee, the cost of materials, meals, and hotel cost. So I think that when I read it, I saw, well, the hotel cost is when you meet at the hotel, they have to, TSBA or whoever has to pay to use that meeting facility. So maybe they can clear that up. But I noticed that we noted it on, or you noted it on this one, but it does say that on many of them that there's a hotel cost in there. So I don't know, for consistency, should it?
So I know for a fact, the leadership conference is usually the day before the TSBA annual meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, so they supply a meal and they supply a meeting room. and they have to, TSBA has to pay for that, and that fee goes to reimburse, to allow for the payment of that. I will also say that every leadership conference that I attended, TSBA, and probably 10 of them or so, they always have outstanding speakers. And, you know, I learned more from those on various subjects, and very broad subjects about leadership, et cetera, than several other courses I've ever taken. So I understand, you know, you can't ask them to specifically say what is going to be the topic of the leadership conference, because they haven't yet decided what speaker they're going to have and what the speaker is going to talk about. But I can just say from experience, every one of them has been of value in increasing my capability as being a leader on a local board of education.
Yeah, and Bob, I can echo that. I was at this past leadership conference, and I sat in a great session on First Amendment and the board's role in that. And it was an hour-long session, and the attorneys that presented that gave it in a new, fresh way. And I think for board members, it is a very valuable conference, because they start early in the morning and they go till late in that afternoon, and there's a lot of opportunities there. So I definitely.
That's almost what I'm wondering is, do we need to treat conferences slightly differently, knowing that just in terms of conference planning, they don't have their speakers set yet or their individual breakout sessions? So is there a slightly different standard there than from an off-the-shelf training that can be taken at any point in the year?
Yeah,
Well, I
and
think the question is, should we be considering this as part of the annual requirements? Should the conference count towards that, or should it be treated, Amy, to your point, as something separate?
No, the answer to that question is yes. Trust me. The intent, I know in the past, has always been, you know, a school board member, you know, if they're new members, they'll have 14 hours of training, some shape, form. And then if they're an experienced member, then it's 7 hours. And then they have these modules. But it's kind of like professional development hours. If I'm a registered engineer, you know, you got to get so many hours. If you're an attorney, you got to get so many hours. And in fact, the law conference, the attorneys do get their hours, professional development hours, at the summer law conference. I know that. And I think it would be wrong to say that those hours do not count toward meeting the requirements of the school board. I think you'd have an uproar, but more importantly, like I say, every one of those have been very valuable to me. Now, what you have to do is be sure that the people attend, and TSBA does a good job of that, of assuring that the people attend, you know, and they have to fill out forms, that type of thing. I don't know. David, what do you think? Do you think it ought to be separate?
I would echo that, because I know I've been doing this now. This is about to start my 9th year, and I've been to this conference probably 7 out of the 9. And I just think from a new board member, that is probably the most valuable thing that they would do. This year I was up there with a brand new board member, and it was very eye-opening, because there's so many different topics. And then from a seasoned board member's perspective, there's topics that get a little bit more in the weeds that maybe the new board member wouldn't do. But I think it's usually been at the Opryland Hotel, and there are many to choose from. And I don't know, you know, if there were just certain topics I'm sure there's a common thread every year that they have at that conference. So you may not have the specific speaker in the specific topic, but there's going to be items on superintendent board relationship. There are going to be legal, you know, and it's not just one legal thing. Like I said, the one on the First Amendment just hit that one piece of it. But I don't know if you would, you know, and I agree that I think that to leave that out, because for board members, I know just from my perspective down here, I got a lot of folks that are professional career jobs that they're working 50-hour weeks. One's an IT engineer. And if I can get them away and you can get them there for 2 days to get that training, it's so much better than driving to Jackson for, you know, a short 2 or 3 hour or 4 hour training, or just one day. Yeah, I think there's definite value to it.
I know Amy and I have spoken at the TSBA conference and about the state board of education and how it compares to the local board. And I know we always get very positive responses, people understanding, and that's valuable information, valuable training information. And as David says, these people, this isn't their major jobs that they're doing, and it would be wrong to have it outside and require training beyond that.
It sounds like in terms of feedback, what we'd be looking for is not necessarily the exact agenda for the conference, considering that we have last year's, but to confirm, will these be somewhat similar courses? Is this something similar to expect? Just get a confirmation from them on that, in addition to some of the other questions that were included on the rubric. Is there anything else or something different that we would want to share or request here? David, thank you for pointing out the hotel feedback. I will go back through the courses and just double check that we're applying the same feedback there to the other courses. And then Amy, to your point, I think perhaps it would be worth considering any adjustments once we get through this round for our rubric when we're considering conferences, to be clear about that. Okay, the next course is legal issues impacting school boards. The recommendation here is partially meets the standard. For this one, the feedback here involves the modules. Just clarification, the date on that was the 21-22 fiscal year, and just confirming that what they mean is looking forward. Also, the course materials, they had attached the modules would not open, so just asking for them to resubmit that. And then the quizzes that they have an evaluation, as their evaluation, we weren't able to review. And so just to confirm that they are assessing the course effectiveness and the achievement of the learning objectives. Okay. The next one is Legislative and Legal Institute. The here is partially standard. This has some similar feedback as the conference, so we can apply that again here as we just discussed. Is there anything else to add?
Well, I think
this one, sorry, go ahead.
no, you're good. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I know this one has been very valuable and that the state board attorneys have presented at this in recent years as well.
Yeah, and I think it's the value too is that they're able to get a real-time update of what's going on with the legislature at that time. So they have a better understanding of what the new laws may be and how they were created, and being able to give that input and understanding the whole process between state board, the legislature, and then how the school board works with that. I think that's a
they address each one of the new laws and tells you this is what it means to you as a state board member, as a local board member, and it's a very helpful session.
Okay, great. The next one is the orientation, new member orientation. So this is the only application that we received for an orientation. And this one is partially meets the standard. The reason here is just the question around the hotel fee or the actual fee for the course. And then the evaluation piece as well, as we've discussed previously. Anything to add for this one in terms of feedback? Okay. The next one is planning a joint venture. The recommendation here is does not meet the standard. And this one, there is a few different pieces of feedback here. One is that the course has a $1,500 fee, although the cost seems to cover very similar pieces as other courses. And so just clarifying, what is it that makes this training significantly more expensive? they mentioned that the course could be done in 7 hours or 14, and so clarifying, is there a different fee depending on which one is selected? The course, they didn't have an agenda for the 14-hour course, which they said was an option, so they just provided a 7-hour course agenda, and then the evaluation feedback that we've applied to all the other ones applies here as well. Anything else to add on this one?
I think if I recall correctly, this kind of goes back to, you know, like we'll have a board retreat or something. It's like their board retreat, and TSBA would hold that board retreat, and it's to address, again, key issues of the time, you know, that's relevant issues. And so it's, again, using the 7 hours or the 14 hours to meet their training requirements in a way that effectively moves that board positive and doing positive planning and how they're going to spend the year. I think that's, I recall that's what that's about.
Bob, I think that's it. It's where TSB would come in and work with the board and superintendent and staff on strategic planning. As you're having a retreat, you're developing, looking at previous plan, updating that plan, and TSB will come in and they will facilitate that. So they come to you. So I would imagine.
So the board is learning. Yeah, the board members are learning about strategic plans, about visions. They write a vision statement, a mission statement, that type of thing. It was very, very helpful as far as developing that board member, because then the next year they know what they're doing. And like I say, yes, TSBA comes, and I think that's TSBA. That $1,500 is the TSBA fee to provide that service.
Right. So they would come to Bartlett or wherever we would do it, and they would have to get a hotel, and I think that helps cover the cost, is my memory.
Yep.
That makes more sense for the higher fee. Just confirm that with them too. Okay. Moving forward, we have the training course called School Law. This is partially meets the standard. Similar feedback here, just around the hotel cost or what the actual fee would be, as well as the evaluation feedback. Okay, the next training course is Summer Law Institute. Recommendations partially meets the standard, and this is the exact same feedback again. Question clarifying the fee itself and the inclusion of lodging or not, and then participants completing the online evaluation, ensuring that they demonstrate achievement of the learning objectives.
I'm betting the discrepancy is simply the price of hotel space in Gatlinburg,
100%.
but they can clarify that.
I'm sure it is 100%. You can stay in Jackson, or you can get a room in Jackson a lot cheaper than Gatlinburg.
All right, the next one is teaming and the school board. This is partially meets the standard. This course had a agenda that spans across 2 days, one in the afternoon and one in the morning, or sessions in the afternoon and morning. And so just some clarifying questions about if this can be combined into a single day training and if that would impact the cost. Similarly, asking about the fee, the $1,500 fee, which is high, probably for the reason that you all mentioned previously, but we'll clarify on that. And then again, the evaluation feedback.
Yep. Same thing on that one.
Okay. And last but not least, for TSBA, the board's role in school finance partially meets the standard, and same feedback again, just clarifying the hotel fee or lodging and the evaluation. Okay. The final course provider that submitted an application is Unity, or rather Unity Training Solutions, and they had one course application titled Building Unity Principles and Skills Through Curriculum Transparency, Learning to Comply with the New Prohibited Concepts in Curriculum Law. And the recommendation here is partially meets the standard. When we're looking at the rubric itself, the reason for this is they did not indicate that who the intended audience was. But I imagine that I know Bob and I have discussed, there's some additional feedback that we'd like to provide.
Yeah, when I read through this, certainly the topic is very relevant, but I couldn't tell where they were coming from and their intonation of how they were going to teach it. And so I would like to see that more of the course curriculum before I would say yes or no on this one.
I think the other thing I would just be cognizant of here, and I would need to look at the bios more closely. This is obviously a complicated legal issue. It does look like one of the trainers is a Tennessee attorney, or at least one is, but just making sure that as people think about this issue, they also know to consult with their board attorney and consider their local representation as well.
Yes.
Well, they didn't have any experience training school boards, but they did consult school boards, they said. So.
It seems like with this one, the feedback to add is just adjusting in terms of the materials. We'd actually like a little bit more information on word in the topic.
I guess here's what we have a law that passed last year of what can be taught in schools and what can't be taught in schools, and I would want to be sure that whatever they present is consistent with that law.
I agree.
And it could even just be some sort of affirmation or, confirmation that they send back and clarification that they're aware of that public chapter and will comply with it. I think it's public chapter 493.
I couldn't tell that from the application, so.
Charlie, did you say 493?
You should double check me, but I think that's it.
Okay.
That's it.
Charlie, you know it. I got faith in you. You've been living
And
it.
now we're in trouble.
He lived it for a while.
Yes.
Still is.
It still is. I've seen him testifying this week. Oh my goodness, bless his heart.
Okay, well, I have captured everyone's feedback on all 23 of these courses and intend to provide this to the applicants early next week so they have an opportunity to review, make revisions. And we'll also send a feedback survey, or rather a scheduling survey, to you all to determine when you're available to meet in April to make final decisions on the applications. Bob, I'll turn it back over to you.
Is there anything else? I think that completes our agenda, right?
Yes.
Well, I would move to take the staff's recommendations to take these back, what we've talked about, and then we will have another meeting later in April, correct?
That's correct.
You need a second on that? Or?
Yes, I guess we do.
I second that, Bob. I agree.
All right. And do we need a roll call on this, Allie?
Yes.
Can you do the roll call?
Yep. All right. Charlie Buffalino.
Aye.
Bob Eby.
Aye.
Amy Owen.
Aye.
David Stevens.
Aye.
We have all ayes.
Well, I appreciate each one of your time. I know we're busy times and busy schedules, a lot going on, but I do think this is important, and hopefully we'll get the feedback from the people, and we can move forward on this early in April to have our recommendation to the state board in May, 1st of May. Any other issues? I will say we're adjourned.
Thank you. Everybody have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hope we
Thank
don't send
Bye.
any, hope we don't send any snow your way. It's supposed to here, so.
Yep.
Has it
We'll
started, has it hit West Tennessee yet?
Not yet, but it looks like it's right across the river. I just want to get these babies home by 4:00 and then it can do all it wants tonight. But
Good luck.
When's it supposed to hit Nashville?
Late.
Late, 9 or 10,
10 or
something like that.
something. Yeah.
Here between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m., and I guess we're sort of right in the center of where the bomb's supposed to hit, so
yeah, they're saying
70 degrees right now, go figure.
Crazy.
it's about 40 here, so the temperature is dropping. Well, y'all have a great weekend.
All right,
You
see you
too.
guys.
Thanks.
Bye now.
Here, y'all.